talk a little bit more about Jefferson Bethke's, and the chapters that I was reading through today was talking about family teams. I absolutely love this concept that he introduces and some of the ideas of how we look at purpose and the importance of coaching and talking like a team. So tune in and learn how I hope you can use some of these ideas as you're reflecting on how you can strengthen your own family and also defining your family's success. When we think about the family's purpose, it's really easy to get caught up in our Western idea of individualism. And this is something Jefferson talks a lot about, is how it's so easy to think about our individual purpose as our family's purpose, or that as a family of individuals, we have competing individual purposes. So for example, if my purpose is to go out into the world and make it a better place by, I don't know, making some gadget that makes people's lives safer. Let's say it's a camera. And I put that purpose above the needs of the family. But my wife has a different purpose. And she wants to make the world a better place by creating art. And so we're both having these competition of time because our family, so needs to help care for the children, coach them. And if we're both competing for time to fulfill our own different purposes, what happens is the purpose of the individual supersedes the vision and mission of the family. And one of the things he talks about is individuals have competing purposes. They end up being winners and losers. Now, most often, whenever you have a competition of this type, the weakest often suffer. And who are the weakest in a family? The children. They're the ones that experience the neglect, the hurt, and the pain as parents' individual careers or their purpose supersedes bedtime routines, morning routines, one-on-one chats. It's really powerful. He talks about Billy Graham's family and how Graham's desire to share the gospel with the world, to go out on these crusades and teach about Jesus Christ, often meant that he was never at home with the family, and how their children just felt neglected and abandoned by their father. Here you have a man trying to do a wonderful thing, and yet still neglects his children. And what happens? Well, they end up, a lot of them getting into drugs, divorce, and they just spiral. And so as we think about defining success for our family, we want to keep in mind that it requires the whole family to achieve that success, and it's just not our individual. And one of the questions I have is, how do you balance the team purpose, the family's purpose, with each individual's capacity? How do you do that with a team of players? And I think rightfully, Jefferson looks a lot to successful sports teams. And I would say you could also reference individual companies where the vision and mission of the company takes priority over individual and short-term needs and priorities to some degree. There's always going to be a little tension here, I think, between the needs of the individual and the needs of the group. And a successful family is one that learns how to balance those needs and desires. The need of the parent to find satisfaction and purpose and fulfillment outside of just being the parent, or even if that is, I'd have to go back and read more about whether or not Jefferson addresses this. But and I'm just off script here for a second. In a lot of other cultures, the collective group takes priority over the individual. We see that a lot in Asian cultures, Eastern cultures, whereas in the West, we are hyper focused on the individual. And I think success is found in the balance between the individual and group identity, where we see that the more you isolate the individual, the more burdens that individual has to place upon themselves to do it and go it alone. And isolation often brings a lot of depression, where at the same time, you have to maintain individual accountability within a group and individual responsibility. So I think when we're looking at our family success, we have to balance each individual's responsibility and identity within the group as well as the group identity. That one does not subsume the other, but they're held in balance. Now, on to the second things he talks about is so that was one of the other aspects of purpose he talks about is that the family doesn't become the purpose. In this regard, we're talking about the image of the family, trying to portray a certain image, a certain ideal that your family represents, wherein your social image takes priority over connection with your own family members. One of the examples he gives this is how once you intertwine Christian concepts of the family and the moral family, and how those take precedent over individual connections. So when your child comes up to you with a question, your first thought is, would this reflect our image? How does this reflect my desire for our family to fit into this mold or ideal versus having that individual connection with your child or with your partner or your spouse? Finally, he talks about how the family is on purpose or family on mission, where the purpose of the family is to achieve a certain goal together. So it's not individuals competing with their own individual goals, and it isn't the image of the family, but it's the family trying to achieve something together. And that's how you create purpose for your family. Another interesting concept he talks about is the importance of coaching. What, as a father, mother, he references a Stanford study on how one phrase can affect or can increase children's performance. It's also known as the Pygmalion effect. It's a cognitive bias, wherein if the parent conveys a belief about something to their child, that child will respond to that belief in their actions, and the parent will also respond from that thought with their actions. And when we see this replicated in a lot of areas, we saw in the 7 habits, we think, he says, see, do, act. We see something, we think something. He's talking about paradigms. And then because the way that we think we do something, then we're creating our results. And in the Pygmalion effect, and in what he talks about, the importance of coaching, there's 3 elements. One is essentially state, I'm telling this because I have high expectations. 2, I know that you can meet. And 3, I will be here with you the entire way. Our children and ourselves, our partners, our spouses need to know that we have this potential inside of us to be more than what we are. But if that's not coupled with the ideas that it's achievable, it can become depressing. How often have you ever bumped up against expectations you don't feel like you can meet? And that's why the concept, that's third idea, the third principle here is not just letting them know we have high expectations, we expect them to make it or to meet those. It's that we will be there with them every step of the way, giving them the support they need to achieve those expectations. Often when I think about this, I think about some of my own children, and it can be as simple as cleaning up the kitchen when it's really messy and saying something like, we're going to clean up this whole place till it looks spotless, and we can do this. But just because I say we can do this doesn't negate the fact that I see this look of just abject depression and defeat in their eyes. They don't really believe it. But when I take them by the hand, we slowly start picking up, okay, we're going to pick up all the spoons, chunk it down to manageable pieces, and then it happens. And then we do clean up, and they start learning with us how to break down large goals, large obstacles into bite-sized pieces. I just absolutely love this concept that as parents, we need to be coaches to our children and to our spouses, and also coaches to ourselves, where we are constantly conveying our belief that we can meet high standards, that we can become more than who we are right now. And that's really what we need to do to survive. And think about in a company where the company's leaders didn't believe that the company could change and improve. We see it stagnant. You end up like Blockbuster. Finally, we're talking about talking like a team. And this really got me. how often when you're talking to your children as they're wondering about why you're leaving them to go to work, you say, "Oh, I have to go to work. Daddy has to go to work." Now imagine if that was replaced with Daddy has to go do our family's work. All of the team saw that the role Daddy or Mommy was doing to bring income, family revenue, was part of the family's work or family chores or whatever it is. Thinking about how the effect would be if we changed a lot of I statements that we often tell our children or spouses. "Oh, I have to go to school. I have to go to work." I said, "Hey, go do our family's work. Hey, I'm going to go get the education for our team." And if we can incorporate when we're thinking about the decisions for our team, are we making the best decisions for our team? If our family was a company, are we making the best decisions for our company? Are we making individual decisions that's really quite destructive?